Yes, I knew Fulton very well.
So you knew Fulton well, yeah?
Yes, and as a graduate student with Penfield, he sent me down there to John Fulton's to see Hoff staining this stuff. Hoff just stayed in bed for the whole month, left me with this impossible situation in the laboratory. He really didn't know much about silver staining, but he wrote buckets about the synapse, you see.
Yes.
Which was nice, but so I went back to Penfield's and made my master's thesis on the boutons terminaux in the synapses in the spinal cord.
You know, Thompson worked with Cajal. There's a signed photograph.
Is that so?
He went to Madrid.
Yes.
You see, Thompson came through a different route.
I'm sure.
He'd spent time with Cajal, and then he worked with L.J. Henderson at Harvard, at the fatigue laboratory.
Yeah.
But at that time, he'd become interested in the psychological aspects of respiration. And I think trying to correlate schizophrenia with respiratory problems.
I didn't know that.
But he actually published in Nature.
Well, that's something. I tell you, if you can get into Nature.
And this is one of his, you see, the relation. So he did a lot of work on breathing.
I see. Patterns of breathing. Well, you know, so much of our work depended on Thompson's wonderful helmet that he built that had 750 cc's give and take to the peak cap. That was hollow.
I see.
You see? And it was plastic that would allow this. And so you could breathe all night. It would never wake you up. It was just wonderful.
The idea was that you pre-breathed before you went on a mission. Was that the idea, that fighter pilots would...
Oh, that came later.
That was
but
later.
The first thing was to prove that his idea was a good one.
Right.
And so his idea was that you would sit in a box and the oxygen would flow around you and through the skin in some marvelous way, not through the lungs at all.
Right.
You would denitrogenate yourself. In other words, there's no nitrogen going to be left to cause the bends.
Right.
Because that's what the bends are, the nitrogen bubbles. Well, so that was shown to be absolutely sound physiology and hopeless for an Air Force. There wouldn't be enough boxes in the world for everyone, you know.
Oh, I see.
And you couldn't sit in a box as you're sitting in that chair.
Yes, okay.
Very restrained, and the long way around. So, Thompson developed this, I guess you'd call it a mask, but it had this wonderful collapsible, what do you call the front of a cap?
A visor? No?
Well, yes, that part that comes out over your eyes.
Yeah.
And this he kept hollow, and it was just wonderful, expanding. And you could sleep with this, as we did for 8 hours at a time. It was just wonderful.
You'd be wearing what, a suit as well?
Nothing. This is all just to get rid of the nitrogen.
Right, oh I see.
And it fitted here. There was an oxygen mask contour to it, but this wonderful thing was connected.
I see.
And it finally developed into a sort of a plastic shield.
Yeah.
And you couldn't turn on your face, of course, in your bed, but you were fine. And we would sleep 8 hours, after which there's no nitrogen in the body. It's just marvelous the way it gets it out gradually.
And how did it feel? Did you feel
nothing?
Nothing.
There's only one chap who'd had a chest problem in his youth. I don't think it was tuberculosis, or it would never gotten in the Air Force. But he had some trouble, and that's the only one that dropped out.
Right.
Otherwise, it was a routine.
Who did you experiment on?
Well, guinea pigs that we got out of Air Force manning depots.
Right.
Where the fellows that were coming in were documented, and they'd go to great big things, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 in one great place, waiting to be posted for elementary flying training. And what you would go, you don't tell them what you're looking for, and you put everyone gradually, God, we worked till midnight, through these runs up to high altitudes. And we wouldn't tell them what we were looking for. And most of the fellows said, I'm terribly sorry, sir, but I've let you down. I've got pains everywhere. Those were our guinea pigs. Take them away to Regina in Saskatchewan, where we had the high altitude lab.
Right.
And they thought they were failures. They were right up our alley because they were bend susceptible.
They were bend susceptible.
That was the big thing. Now, if we could take them after pre-breathing of oxygen, as you say, and they didn't get the bends, we knew that we were succeeding.
I see, okay.
So we never told anybody what we were looking for. And these fellows that were getting pains and felt badly about letting us down, they were just our meat. Just
fantastic, right.
So we took the boy quietly, never telling anybody what it was we had been looking for. And some of them went right to the top. Marvelous fellows.
So by the top you mean 40, 50,000 feet? Or?
Well, yes, they got into high altitude flying.
Yes.
The average fellow was up to 25,000.
25.
In the bombers, you see.
Yes.
But these, the fellows that did the top work, were way up high. And I believe that they weren't Canadians, naturally. Everything we did was brought to the RAF.
So they were RAF? I see, they were RAF.
Well, there were Canadians headed this way for Canadian squadrons, but we would send as many as we could through, what was that marvelous, Farnborough.
Farnborough.
Yeah. We were very close to them. They came
Right.
to see us and so on. Now, there were two problems that we're looking, or two groups of people. Bombers and the higher altitude, single engine fellows. And they were photo reconnaissance.
I see.
Who are you?
Right.
Now, I'm told, I never got over here, you see, we had to stay with this grinding research, that they were at 47,000 feet over the delta in the Nile with photographing. And you see the Ack guns couldn't get them much beyond 30,000 feet. Well, then the German fighter pilots, I don't think that they understood this other thing. And they would be up there. And finally, these RAF guys, going like the wind, and they knew they wouldn't get the bends. This was the big secret of the high altitude.
So they had done this pre-breathing.
Not for the overnight at all.
No.
They were just breathing pure oxygen at the ready.
At the ready.
That's the point.
I see, okay.
So it paid off handsomely.
Right, okay.
Now that story is entirely over here, so I can't help you on.
Yes.
Except that that's how they did it.
Okay, all right. That's really illuminating. You've helped me tremendously to understand what was going on. I think I've got some one of the papers that there's a really good account by Wilfred Eggleston, Scientists at War, about the Canadian medical research.
Yes.
And he's written about decompression sickness.
Yes.
And some of the work that was done mentions, it begins there.
Yes. Number one, CIU, Clinical Investigation Unit, that was strongly held by Banting. See, June 39, Banting was into the war. See, he'd been in the First War, and as I told you, part of his elbow shot off.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't stop operating without all this injury. He's a remarkable, tough guy. Yeah, these were all the bosses. Now there's the fellow. C.J. Mackenzie. And he was the Dean of Engineering at Saskatchewan.
At Saskatchewan.
And he came into the ring and did a wonderful job in Ottawa.
I see.
Penfield told me he never saw men work harder. And he says, Billy, I don't want anyone talking about Ottawa. not doing its job and going home at 4:30 in the afternoon. He said it's rubbish.
Right.
It just
Okay.
worked.
So he ran this National Research Council with the
C.J. Mackenzie,
right,
who was
with the
professor of
aviation,
engineering
right.
in Saskatchewan and came to
Yeah,
the Senate.
and he moved in.
He
Right.
was great.
He was the great person.
Then Banting, of course, was killed.
Yes.
His plane
Yeah.
ran into a mountain in Newfoundland in terrible weather.
Yeah.
So now then, we see what's down here now. Yes, the National Research, and they started this investigation unit, which all of us went through eventually in Toronto. God, they're wonderful people. Fish biologist, Edgar Black, Edgar C. Black.
Yeah.
Something wrong with his heart. He couldn't possibly be in the Air Force, but as an NRC man, he did this stuff, you see. First class. Then there were fish biologists.
Yeah.
Now, Banting's secretary was Chester Stewart.
Right.
Wonderful boss to work for.
Yeah.
And he became a wheel Banting secretary, and he went across Canada pre-war saying where we could do some research. It was really early days in research.
Right.
Here and in Canada, of course.
Right.
We're the sort of second round. Stewart was marvelous. He became Dean of Medicine at Halifax.
Okay.
Dalhousie University, it's called. Yes, we were ahead of the Americans because we started war in 39 and they in 41.
41. Despite Fulton's work. I mean, I've actually got some. Look at that, and then I've got some documents from Fulton here.
Good, good. Yes, well, they're talking just about what we're saying here. We didn't say too much about it outside, I can tell you. It was thought to be highly secret. Yes, the inhalation of pure oxygen for some time before ascending. That was for the fighter pilots. But we proved the thing by sleeping with those Thompson masks for 8 hours overnight. Then, you see, if it takes 8 hours to denitrogenate the body, it's going to take 8 hours the next day to renitrogenate. So we could go and play baseball or garden or work in the office, whatever. And after 5 hours, we could still go up with some protection.
Yeah.
Because we had won 8 hours of protection by this overnight breathing, which was the key. That's what Thompson helped us with. Now, I think this is all of what I've been telling you.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
And this is, I copied this.
FBRC, isn't it?
I copied this in Ottawa, in the archives.
Yeah.
And that's from National Research Council.
And here's the man.
Yeah.
Bassett.
Yeah. That. You see what I've been trying to piece together.
Yeah, you're doing it right. You've got it right.
And so that's one of the papers which they wrote together.
Yeah. Now George Manning was the fellow who was waiting in the corridor as a medical student to go in and talk to Banting. These are pre-war days, and this fellow was bodily thrown out, a newspaper reporter, and Manning sitting there quivering, a medical student, wondered, he says, "Who am I working for?"
Right.
So Banting picks him up by the arm, and they were boon companions ever since. So George was head of the high altitude unit in Regina, Saskatchewan.
In Regina, right.
He became a squadron leader, yes, in Regina. Wonderful fellow.
And that's what you've been saying.
Yes.
Removal of nitrogen.
So this is written by Bassett and Thompson and
Bateman. Yeah.
No, it must have been one of the Cambridge Batemans, the genetics family, I guess. I've never met him that I know of. Now, critical level. Well, that's just what we've been saying. Now they're giving chapter and verse, you know, the actual measurements.
And that's why I mentioned J.S. Haldane as
Yes, now, the critical levels of gas can be calculated using Haldane's criterion. This name maybe not JBS at all,
No,
but his father,
the
John
father.
Scott.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
The old man was way ahead of things, you know.
Yeah.
But his wife and Sherrington's wife couldn't get on at all.
Well, that's why I wonder.
No.
Is that a reason why Bazette would have gone to the States?
No. He was offered the chairmanship of physiology, so people applied to Sherrington for advice in those days.
Yeah.
He said, well, there's your man.
Right.
And he was, Bassett may have been born here, but all his relatives that I knew lived on Vancouver Island.
Oh, I see.
And he was on his way out to, and I'd offered him a job in my lab.
Yeah.
On retirement, you see, at the end of the war.
Yeah.
And he died on the way. He never. The same thing happened for the great neuropathologist at Queen Square. They gave him such a send-off in Washington, D.C., that he died that night. We never got him either. Greenfield, he was. Wonderful man. So this is the detail. Far too much detail for what you want. I think. Yeah.
But
this is all right. Benke was in the U.S. Navy. He was the captain, full captain, like a colonel.
Yeah.
In the U.S. Navy.
Did you ever come across someone from the Naval Research Institute called Andrew Ivy, A.C. Ivy?
No, but he was very important in the work.
Yes.
No, I never met him. No, it was very difficult to travel into the States. There was a clamp down on foreign exchange.
Right.
And we could hardly get it.
You could hardly get... I know that Thompson once... I mean, Fulton came to Toronto.
I see.
And that Thompson also went down. Actually...
Well, Fulton ran an open house, you see, at New Haven, at Yale.
Yeah.
This is very good. Highly technical. Here we go. About the 9 hours, you see, to get rid of the stuff.
Yeah.
The nitrogen. Commander McDonald. I don't know who's. He's not medical, I think. We were well treated, thanks to the National Search fellows. They understood we had to be protected.
So you needed the
help.
So all this work was done in Toronto, or was it done in Halifax?
No, Halifax was 12 decompression chambers in a row.
Yeah.
For the routine testing up to such and such an altitude. I don't know what. For crews that were finished their training and coming overseas.
Yeah.
So Hal Warwick, who was a Rhodes Scholar here, he and Donald Lloyd Smith, all these bright guys were down there. But these 12 in a row was routine stuff. I was lucky. I was out there where the experimental stuff was going on with Manning. And he would protect you, you know, against all these damn fool commanding officers.
So you were in Halifax?
No, Regina.
You were in Regina?
For 2 years.
Right, okay.
And you know, it's hotter than the hinges in summer and 40 below in winter.
I see.
And that was not the place to go after I'd had rheumatic fever. But you memorized where the fences were. Right. If you'd been out for the evening, then you'd get in away from the wind. The chill factor was enormous.
You know, the interesting thing is that John Thompson had a problem with TB on the lung.
Did he really?
And the first time he wanted to join the RTAS, they rejected. They wouldn't take him. It was only in '43 that they did. They took him in.
That's interesting.
On Bazette's recommendation.
Oh well, sure.
So he would have been a civilian until then. And
then you see, Bassett was in Canada, head of the Banting Institute.
Yeah.
That's where this work was done.
Right.
And there's another great fellow that should note the name of.
Yes.
Murray.
Yeah.
Barr, B-A-R-R.
Yeah.
And he's the man that post-war, working on aviation problems
for
Peanuts, discovered the bar body, that little body that all female cells have of the body, and males don't have.
Oh, I see.
This was discovered because he had one of our technicians out of the Air Force. Now, Murray Barr, you won't believe this, his office over here in charge of Canadian medical was up in the roof of Selfridge's building in London.
Oh, right.
That's where he was given an office.
Well, that's a fascinating thing, that there is another world. Oxford, London is fascinating from the point of view of medical installation. Would come everywhere.
So he had nothing up there but his office. And he got so tired of that at 10 o'clock in the morning, he'd go to Queen Square.
I see.
That's where he worked on microscopic stuff on nerve cells.
I see.
It was not there. He discovered the bar body, which just changed everything. People had been looking at nerve cells and other cells for years without realizing what it was doing. So I think this was just post-war, and Murray Barr was given, I believe, $750 from the Air Force to study the ability of pigeons to go to high altitude and keep going.
I see.
Now, there, his technician was a wonderful fellow called Ted Walker. And he became a W01, which is right at the top of the non-officer class, next to. Well, Ted Walker had been, I believe, at the Banting, but here he was at London, Ontario with Barr. And one day Barr said, "Why is it, Ted, that you can stain that little dot in nerve cells sometimes and not other times? Can't you get one technique that'll do it every time?" And he rather roasted poor old Walker until he said, "Well, maybe we'd better see if this occurs in some of our animals and some. Why is that?" So they went through, and the female cats had this, and the male cats didn't have, and this just exploded. So he got the John F. Kennedy Prize for his work on all this kind. From then on, it was just wonderful. And I think it was $750, just nothing for a full professor after the war to find out why pigeons could put up with anoxia. And this is what came out of it.
Fantastic.
So, you know, John F. Kennedy gave him this great thing, and Barr went to the top.
Fantastic.
So
that's the second paper, the incidence of decompression, it's a more general paper. Which he did with Sharp. Probably the Sharp. So Thompson clearly headed that.
Yes. And,
June 20.
Yes. Rolly Brett, B-R-E-T-T, was a first-class researcher. And as you see, he was only a flying officer. He may have been promoted later, but what was the year? 42. Yeah, that was early, really.
Quite large. Quite large numbers of subjects.
Oh, yeah.
200 subjects.
Well, they were coming in. We would have 1,000 men at a manning depot, as at Edmonton up in the north. And the Aussies would come off the boat, and the New Zealanders, you see, and go up by train. And one of the medical officers was a distant relative of Colonel Bligh of the Bounty. He's a wonderful chap. I knew his father well in Australia when I taught out there. Great people. And so they would go up there. Well, these Aussies, you see, had blue woolen material in their uniforms. The Canadians had probably as warm, but the RAF stuff was awfully thin and not good wool. So when there was a chance, we would put the RAF fellows that would come out through our clothing group, and they would leave their old stuff here and come out with the Canadian stuff there. They would come out, for instance, to set up a Spitfire for a bond drive. And first they would come in and then get these new clothes. The next time to take the thing down and put it in another city to make the bond drive go, It'd be a completely different group. They wanted to change stuff too. So the RAF had training stations in the worst god-awful parts of the prairies. They were set up that way along the Canadian Pacific Railways across the country. Why? So that post-war there would be a set of airstrips that the Canadian Railway was going to go into the aviation business, which they did.
Which they did.
Yes.
Far-sighted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, these poor guys in the bush would go crazy. There was no town around them. It was awful. So they would go into an awful place, a town called Moose Jaw, of all the places. And I've written quite a bit about that. They in the middle of the night, in one of these cheap hotels in Moose Jaw, here's this RAF officer chasing some girl down the corridor in the hotel upstairs. Neither of them with any clothes on, you see. So he was court-martialed. Get up there in front of the judge. And so his defense was wonderful. The regulations in the RAF said that sports attire was that suitable to the sport in which one was engaged. The judge threw the case out and the guy was scot-free.
All right, okay. But did these people, these were your experimental subjects, or? No?
Well, those people were officers in elementary flying training.
Right.
On old Mach machines.
Right.
But the Canadians that came in and the Australians by droves, they were experimental subjects. That is, we could get them as experimental subjects away from their plotting and their learning of observation. And we could hold them for an extra month or two if necessary.
And did they volunteer?
Yes, they could only take volunteers. We would never...
That was strict?
Absolutely.
Right. And did you always explain to them
what
you were going to do? That was always explained.
Yeah. But we wouldn't tell them who was going to be selected. Because we were looking for fellows with the bends.
With the bends.
That we could then prevent with the nitrogen, get the nitrogen out.
Right, okay.
So we had to keep this concealed.
Yes.
And move from that huge manning pool in Edmonton over to Regina. And they lived, I think they all enjoyed it. One fellow who'd been a fur trapper in the north, he came down to see my father in Victoria, BC, who was the head of correspondence education. In other words, if you lived more than 3 miles from a school, you could go by mail.
Right.
Well, this changed the picture. This guy came down with a lot of money. And he said to my father, could I get the whole of high school, 4 years of it, I have a truck outside, take it over to this expensive Empress Hotel in the harbor. And he said, and I should be back in 6 weeks with his matriculation, which was necessary for the Air Force. And he did. He went through, we had him held back for a while as an experimental subject. He came back in a year overseas with the DFC. He came back the next year with the DSO. And so I said to him, what are you going to do, fly for the airlines? He said, to hell with that, I'm going right back to fur farming in the north.
Oh.
Bright fellow, huge man.
Yeah.
We were so lucky in the Air Force. The kind of people that came forward.
Yes. Incredibly motivated, isn't it? And after all, the Americans that was Thompson the only American there, or were there other Americans who come across and volunteered? I mean, they were motivated.
Oh, we had dozens of them.
Yeah.
And they were stopped coming in March 15th, I think it was, 1942. Because by then, after Pearl Harbor,
of course,
the Americans. So there was a cutoff date. And I remember I was in the recruiting center where 12 fellows came in from Hollywood. And they said, Mr. Jack, somebody or other in the industry had sent them. And each one would tell me this. I thought, well, I'm sick of Hollywood already. The 12th fellow, fortunately, had too high blood pressure. He stopped in front of the restroom, ranging him. I sent him for a walk. I said, well, go up to Stanley Park and just walk back. He got lost and he came puffing back and his heart rate was low. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? The train is going to take these boys up through the Rockies to Edmonton tonight. So I said, just sit down there with it. And I faked the thing, and I said, join them. So all 12 got out of our...
Oh, right. Okay.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That was the cutoff,
Yes.
March 15th.
Right. And did you get to know Thompson as a person at
No.
all? No, not at all. You just...
Only in the mess when I'd be in Toronto.
Right. Oh, I see.
He didn't come west at all.
He never came west.
No.
I see. So that's... So
But
you never...
his helmet did.
Oh, I see. His helmet.
That was so
it.
important.
I see. Okay. Fine. So you never got to know what sort of person he was,
Oh,
what his interests
in the mess,
were?
I would see him. He was
Right.
very pleasant, very quiet.
Quiet.
I couldn't understand what his object was in working so hard to join the RCAF. But he loved that work, that life
Right.
in Toronto. And of course, Farnborough's fellows were coming like that over the hill. When I went to the West Coast to get ready for Okinawa, you see, which we never went to, but we had the high altitude, the bombers, and the bomber crew. So we had to take them up and certify that they didn't get the bends because we didn't trust any pre-breathing of oxygen out in the Orient. We didn't think that was likely. So we'd have to rigidly select men out and say, sorry. But what happened was, one day, Squadron Leader Goldie from Farnborough just walked in. He says, Bill, I've come for tea. And then the next fellow would come in. Then there was a wing commander, medical, who also was able to fly these vast machines over. He came for tea. Where were they going? Hollywood.
I see. Okay.
So there was quite unofficial collaboration with good RAF people.
Right.
No question.
I brought along here some things from
God, you worked hard on this.
these are documents from the National Academies of Sciences
Yes.
in Washington.
Yes.
Where I was interested in the Aviation Committee and looking
Yeah.
at Fulton's work.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to go to Yale,
Good.
where I want to see Fulton's
Yes.
paper, and of course there's a fantastic library at Fulton.
It is.
There.
It is great.
That's
where I came back as a professor later.
Right, and so these are this is some sort of, this is Thompson's links to Edward Mellenby, about this Flying Personnel Research Committee, and recent...
You see, this was one of the longest students here of Sherrington. He was Rhodes Scholar.
Because Thompson didn't know Sherrington, did he? I don't think that.
I wouldn't think so.
No.
Because, Sherrington left Oxford in 1935.
Right. This is something here, recent developments in medical research in the United States and Canada, a confidential report
Whittingham. He
to
was
41.
Yeah.
So, this is the new oxygen mask.
Yes.
And the issue of oxygen. I think it's just background material.
I see. All right.
Then it was interesting that Sanford Larkey is a figure in, and of course he's got the historical interests.
True, and I think he was more the official boss of things.
Right.
I don't know that he was an experimentalist, was he?
Right. I
don't think so.
Right.
He ran everything down there.
And you see, one can see how the Americans are monitoring what's going on with the
Bassett.
links, with Bassett, with the Royal Canadian Air Force, Wing Commander Hall, Wing Commander Price.
Now, Hall was the man who really ran the Banting Institute for Banting, and he came with an agricultural degree, and Banting made very sure that he studied medicine.
Right.
So he was his right hand. They fought cat and dog over certain things. But Hall became the head of the research at Air Force Headquarters, Ottawa, and then the Dean of Medicine at Western, where Barr was, and Banting had been, and so on. And then he became the president of the university.
So that's
quite a figure.
So one can see how the Canadians and the Americans were linking into each
Very
other. And so
closely.
I've got to work as well with the documents from the Public Record Office.
Yes.
Let's see what else I have. Did you look at any foreign publications, German publications?
No, Russian.
Russian?
Oh, yes. One of my pals was, what do you call these people? Ukrainian.
Yeah.
And he was a general practitioner in Saskatchewan. And one day on vacation in New York, he walked into the Russian bookstore, and there was the Russian Aviation Medicine book.
Right.
So he took it to the West, and I used to go across by plane to see him in his flying circus place out in the boonies. And we'd work on these things together, trying to interpret what they meant. But the Russians, in the between the wars, had a very good Institute of Aviation Medicine. Yeah. I think it was outside Moscow. I was never there, but this strange crowd that ran the things in Ottawa, they said, that has to be ultra secret. But it was on the bookshelves. But no one was wandering around here. It's a jolly good book.
Yeah?
Yeah. Easter Steinman, if you want his
Steinman,
name. He
yeah.
did much of the translating at Yale with John Fulton.
With Fulton, so that's what you were monitoring the Russian work.
There, you have a pen here.
I have a pen, you're more observant than me. Let's see.
His name is Iser, I-S-E-R,
Yeah?
Steinman, S-T-E-I-M-A-N.
So that's, yeah, right. And this is, one can see here the role of ivy coming in
right.
regarding altitude tolerance, decompression sickness. And so what I've got to do, there are clearly a number of parallel research groups, and what Ivy was working on,
Yes.
I think, was in parallel to what was going on in Canada. But then the interesting thing is that after the war, Ivy and Thompson got together on the issue of medical war crimes
That's interesting.
and evaluating the German work, which led to the Nuremberg doctors' trial.
Yes.
It's
I
absolutely...
wonder how that got done. Probably an officer's message.
Yeah.
Talking, you know. There was no curriculum.
Right. Then I've got I went through the American bibliographies of aviation medicine,
Yes.
which John Fulton was putting together. He was very keen on this bibliography.
Oh, he's a great fellow. Big.
Yes. And so one can sort of that was a pretty good place to work. Most of this now relates to Ivy. Still some Canadian documents, which... It's interesting
Yes.
that all this should have come from Washington, really.
Yes, well, that's fine.
About the contacts through
Yes.
Larkey.
Yes.
That's a letter from Banting, and then the links with the early links with Professor Fulton.
Yes. And Matthews was at Cambridge, of course, and he's been sent to Farnborough.
So I can reconstruct how the links,
Yes,
how the links develop.
Carmichael's Queen Square.
Right.
A great fellow. I used to go down to the so-called Bible class on Fridays from
Yes.
and he just tore the skin off the Americans, but he made an exception for me as a
I
Canadian.
see. Okay.
Yeah.
But
But that was a good group of people. Yeah. Course line.
and you can see here how it all
Yeah,
was set up.
the volume, once the Americans came in, the volume of work was enormous. Some of it may not have been that original, but Bassett was the key to so much of this. God, he was a bright fellow. Now, Collip was the man in biochemistry who cleaned up the insulin for Banting.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that goes
He's
back.
a really top man. He finally ended up as the chairman of the National Research Council.
Right.
At McGill, he did great things with all the separation of the endocrine hormones. Great fellow. Let me just tell you for a second. When he became president of the Royal Society in Canada, he was welcoming a lot of Canadians and Americans and others to some great physiological show post-war in McGill. And so they give them a great afternoons, evenings reception and conversazione up on the top of Mount Royal. So poor old Collip, because the mayor of Montreal was there, he did his best in French, which he didn't know very well at all. So the mayor congratulated him on being bilingual, speaking English and French at the same time.
I see.
It was really mixed up. All right, who else is here? Yeah. Cecil Drinker. Well, of course, the drinker, respirator for polio.
I see. Okay.
You see, these are all active people in civilian life doing their best here. These were all names to us working out in the prairie by ourselves. Frank Tisdall was the man who introduced this pablum for babies, made a fortune out of it. He was a pediatrician, first-class pediatrician. And I forget what you call that substance. It was patented and he made a fortune. Very good man. Now, what else?
Anyway, that's the link. Can I, perhaps, I think there's just one last set of documents which I'd like to put these over here.
Now let's get this before chairs.
Right, let me, this is a, these are foreign ministry documents about John Thompson.
Yes, right.
And relate.
Which ministry? Which one?
Lester Pearson.
Oh, I see, from Canada.
From Canada,
Yeah.
Canadian. It relates to John Thompson later on.
What's the date?
1947. So this is all, it's to do with Lester Pearson backed John Thompson for a scheme of founding an international university in Germany.
That's interesting, because we've just founded, 20 years ago, the Lester Pearson College of the Pacific, similar to the one down here in Wales, the first.
Oh, right, yeah.
What are those called?
Atlantic College.
Exactly. So, Pearson was in London.
Yes.
And he, with his wife, and some huge fellow from Atlantic College, were to take him from London by car down to see it. And at Southampton he says, I'm weary, I don't think we should go on. And his wife said, look here, they're doing this for us, we're going to go on.
Right.
Well, he couldn't believe what a wonderful thing he saw. And he says, we're going to have that in Canada. So Mountbatten came out, you see, and helped choose the site. My job was to try and contain Mountbatten.
I see, right.
He says,
amazing.
I drove him out there to the thing, and he climbed the cliff, and that's where we finally decided on. Well, he arrived with a most awful throat. He'd been having a great luncheon in Palm Springs with a couple of theatrical guys or musicians, I forget who they were. And so I had to have this throat sprayed so he could speak to 1,000 men at the Canadian Club the next day in Vancouver. And he made a great case for what is called the College of the Pacific, now Pearson College. But Pearson had a head-on collision with the Army. You see, he was the head of external affairs for Canada.
Yeah.
He was years in London here, at London Canada House. He was a Rhodes Scholar, and so on. Well, he finally had a fight with the Canadian Army, and out of the vast, they're the biggest, you see, the defense in Canada owns more land than anyone else. So all he wanted was 70 acres.
Oh.
So he had a hell of a row with him. Finally, we got it, And David, who are the Bristol people with
Yeah.
tobacco, Wills.
Will, yeah.
David Wills paid $270,000 for this to stop the row.
Marvelous.
And
Oh,
it's
right.
a wonderful
Okay.
place. Now they have their own, what do you call this, stations.
Marine,
Well, yes, they took over a chain of islands
yeah.
where there are more wrecks than anything else. And Prince Charles has a wreck that he goes to when he's out there.
Oh,
and so on.
right.
So Mountbatten really came
Mm-hmm.
and did a great job for
Mhm.
us. God, it was good.
Mm. See, Pearson was backing Thompson the whole time.
That's most interesting.
And
I wonder how he got to know him.
well, it would be very interesting to know, really. But there were others who were more critical.
Thompson.
Who were, yes. There was Norman Robertson, the High Commissioner.
Yeah.
Because Thompson, you see, was a sort of roving ambassador for the
Yeah.
Canadians.
That wouldn't suit this fellow. You know.
Julian Huxley.
No, the other one.
Norman
Robertson. Yeah.
Yes, it didn't suit.
He was a stay by the bridge.
By the book.
Line, the book, exactly.
That's right, and they didn't like the fact that Thompson was going around Europe, and you see, he was producing the most wonderful reports. And Thompson is, with Pearson's backing, is going around Europe finding support of leading intellectuals for the international universities. So we have a clutch of reports here from Italy.
Good.
For example, these are a list of the people whom he had contact with in Italy.
Yes.
He'd been to Oxford, where Gilbert Murray
Yes.
was a backer.
Sure.
He had also a lot of literary contacts with Stephen Spender.
Yes.
And all the time he's reporting back to Pearson.
I see.
And
That's interesting.
so that I was very pleased to get hold of these.
That's wonderful.
And at the same time, Thompson is running this International Scientific Commission on War Crimes.
At the same time, well.
Yes, and briefing the Americans for the Nuremberg medical trial.
Good.
So he's doing a lot of fantastic things, and let me find.
I'm going to make a note in my diary and ask my brother, who was in external affairs with Pearson,
Right.
to see if he recalls this or anything about it.
And Saint Laurent put
Yes.
the brakes on it.
Oh,
And
well,
Saint Laurent was, of course, a powerful
he was the prime minister.
prime minister, so that
The head of Pearson.
and because they felt they couldn't justify it if questions came up in Parliament, in the House of Representatives.
They were just faint-hearted, some of those.
But it was a visionary scheme.
I agree.
And then Thompson found Julian Huxley took him under his wing.
Yes, good.
So he found a niche there and could continue it.
That's
But
good.
so that's what makes him so interesting. And the other interesting thing is, again with Thompson, is that he then went as his final job. He was offered a chair in physiology in Ottawa,
Yes,
and he turned it down.
that was a new medical school. You see.
Yeah. Instead, after working for UNESCO,
Yeah.
he went as assistant professor, the lowest grade,
To
a new medical school
where?
in New York, the Albert Einstein Medical College.
Sure. Central in New York.
And he worked there with down and outs and on patients whom the others had given up on.
Was John medically qualified or what?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
at Edinburgh.
Oh well, good.
He had he'd studied biology at Stanford,
Yes.
and then he qualified in medicine in Edinburgh, and then he went to Freiburg in Germany where he did some pathology,
Yes.
to Cajal in Madrid, and then went over to Henderson at Harvard.
Right.
So it's
He did
interesting.
the right places.
So, yeah. And then he helped survivors, and at the same time as he was doing all this, he was helping survivors from concentration camps.
Remarkable.
And the cardinal who became Pope John
Yes, John 23.
converted, supported him in Paris
Yes.
in a settlement for people with psychological problems and child survivors.
You've
And
got
John
a good
converted
book on
to-
your hands.
Well, that's what I think.
Oh, yes.
So there's
I'll
the
try
book
and-
about the Nuremberg medical trial, but a biography of Thompson now, because
Yeah.
the children whom he adopted from Belsen when he came over with,
Yeah.
you see, he came over with an RCAF unit
Yes.
to Germany,
Mhm.
responsible for dismantling the German
Yes.
Luftwaffe
Yeah,
installations,
yes, yes.
but at the same time was helping the children from
Wonderful.
Belsen.
That's a great story.
And he adopted 7 children. And these children, some of them are still alive, and regard themselves as his children.
Have you been able to interview any
Yes,
of them?
yes,
Good.
that's what I'm doing.
You got it together then.
So
That's
he's
wonderful.
he's a person who is I can say he's an unsung hero, both as a humanitarian,
Quite.
as an intellectual visionary, and as a very competent scientific researcher, but who's someone who thought about
Yeah.
the
That's a wonderful story, to put that together. Somebody will make a film of that. What happened immediately after the Germans surrendered as a story still to be told.
Right. You see, I found that the Public Record Office of this RCAF unit,
Yes,
the operations manuals,
yes.
the diaries, which were being kept of the day-to-day
Absolutely,
procedures,
yeah.
and John was helping them set up an encampment
Great.
under tents and so on, while doing his best to provide the medical assistance for the
Wonderful.
survivors.
Wonderful.
So all the time he's linking
What a
the
great
science
job.
and the personal. So he's a man who
Oh.
developed, you could say, from
Yeah, that's true,
Um,
but he was almost a silent partner.
yeah.
He wasn't making speeches, was he?
No.
He was getting the job done.
Yes.
Oh, there are too few of those.
Well,
I'm making a note about Pearson being interested in this work, but Norman Robertson, I could immediately say, would be against it.
Right. Bill, it's 10:10,
Yes.
and I know you're due at
Oh.
Sir Richard's at 11.
No, after 11.
After 11.
So
Now,
11:30.
I've got my car round the corner.
Yes.
Would you like it if I drove you up to Brooks and we just look at it for 5 minutes?
Sure,
Just for
absolutely.
5 minutes.
Because
yes?
I've never seen it and I couldn't understand
Yes.
it. But it came from the former institution up there. What was that called?
The Oxford
Techno-
Polytechnic.
Polytech.
And the interesting thing is that we have at Brooks a Sinclair building named after Hugh Sinclair.
Wonderful. My boon companion.
And Brian, that's where the life sciences are. And Brian Lloyd, was a physiologist here, is actually a former director of the Polytechnic. So we have a very long, and he's the person, Brian Lloyd,
Yes.
who appointed a number of historians of science.
Great.
So that
Now, what is the population of Brooks?
13,000
You
students.
see, that's why you should turn it around.
We have as many students as Oxford University,
Sure.
but it's spacious. Well, it's fairly packed.
Must be.
Although,
Can you get more land?
well, they've taken over Westminster College.
What's that?
It
Was
was
that a
teacher,
theological college?
yes,
Yeah.
as for teacher training,
Yeah.
and that's got a beautiful site on Harcourt Hill.
So,
That's a very, very big site, but of course it's on the other side.
that's all right.
And there's also out at Wheatley, there's another
Yeah.
centre. But I'll just
Take land wherever you can get
Yes.
it. Do you know what they want for this place next door? The Radcliffe Infirmary site,
Right.
10.5 acres, £50 million. So we're going to build more, but on our own property here.
your own property.
We're not going to dicker with those guys anymore. It's a scandal that the hospitals trust in Great Britain, which is the government in disguise, has stolen, if you like, all the hospitals
Right.
that so many private people have put money into to help. That's how the Radcliffe got going in the first place, one man. Well, that'll be
Well,
great.
let's-
I'll put a
let's-
tie
let's-
on.
Let's, as I say, I'm parked round the corner, and
Well, wonderful.
can I? I haven't brought. Can I give you my conference details?
Sure.
This summer conference,
Wonderful.
just in case you've got time to.